Bart, welcome to episode number 8 at the WimLex show, today from Amsterdam. In this episode we're going to talk about the development of the Dept Agency group and what is happening in the Dutch and German markets and how your customers are developing and demanding services from the agency in this market. So it's kind of a special show where Wilhelm is not only is going to ask questions, but only has got some answers too. But we want to take the opportunity, as we both have you here at the venue. That's going to be very interesting. So before we deep dive into the agency market of the Benelux, please explain a little bit your background, what you're doing, and where you're coming from.
So what I'm doing now, or what I have been doing. So let me start at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I studied physics in Delft, and right at the end of my studies, my brother Paul came to me and he said, "This internet thing that I'm reading about," and this was in 1995. What is it? How does it work? And can we make money with it? Because he's a very entrepreneurial guy. And I'm...
so it's like Bitcoin today.
It's
Same
a little bit
questions.
like Bitcoin or AI or what have you. So so this new thing coming up, can we make money? And studying at the University in Delft, I was using lots of internet technology already for 1 or 2 years on mainframes and Unix workstations. So I said, yeah, it's really easy. And I showed him, and then he said, okay, let's make a business together. So we took off with the two of us, where he was the entrepreneurial and the sales guy, and I was the guy developing the stuff. So that was my first sort of 10 years at TomTom, our agency that we built. I'm a sort of a self-studied developer, self-educated, I should say. And after that, I moved on to more generic technical advice and technical sales role within the agency. And obviously now it has evolved into Dept, which we'll probably go into a little bit more.
Yeah, can you give us some rough numbers? So how many people are working now at Dept? How many companies are included in the network?
So at this moment, we have about 1,000 people. We are represented in about 10 countries. I think, if I'm exact, it's a collection now of 16 agencies. But those are not discernible anymore, all of them, because we integrated many of them into one Dept. In the German market, this still has to be done, where we also will continue as one Dept. So actually the number of agencies is decreasing, while we keep on adding new agencies to the group.
Because we have a lot of German listeners, so what kind of agencies, or what is the name of the agencies that are part of the Dept network there?
Right now we have, so we started off with Be Excellent, which is a Salesforce demandware specialist. Then we had Trust Agents from Berlin, an SEO and search engine marketing agency. Then we had Superreal in Hamburg, digital commerce specialist and creative agency. We added Factor A, or Factor A, I should say in English, the Amazon marketing specialist. And last but not least, we have Xava and Visumate, the influencer marketing agency and creative advertising agency in Berlin, added to the group. So that's the group now in Germany.
And when did you decide to grow with an M&A strategy instead of, like, most agencies are now in a stage somewhere, even they are like smaller with like less than 50 people. Some are getting stuck with like 50 to 100 people focused on, I don't know, performance marketing or e-commerce development or more like creative stuff. And very, very few agencies are able to create a network like you're creating right now. What was like the kick-off of doing this?
So the kick-off, so there's a little bit of a story there. I think it's worth explaining. We, in the period from, let's say, about 2010 to 2014, we had a very strong management team, and we focused on building and growing our TamTam Dutch agency in that phase, make it profitable, make it grow, make it a top 3 agency of the Netherlands. Basically, that was our goal. And we could honestly say that around 2013, 14, we sort of reached that goal where we said, okay, we are a top 3 agency in the Netherlands, and we do have a healthy growth and healthy margins, and we run a healthy business. I think we were about 130 employees big. We serviced some very nice brands in the Netherlands and some international as well, but not that many. And then came the phase that also, so Paul and me were founders, and we assembled a management team around us. And this management team were also going like, okay, guys, what's going to be our next step? What's going to be our next adventure? Because we've done this adventure now for a couple of years, and we want to continue on a new journey. We don't want to get stuck here on this level and do the same for another 5 or 10 years. We want to do something bigger. So at that point we said, okay, the next adventure is probably fun and cool if it's going to be an international adventure, because that's something we've never done before. So heck, why not? It's hard, but it's achievable. So that was an internal motivation. Then I think there's another motivation as well, is that we saw the market develop where there was a big opportunity for having a true multidisciplinary agency. And let me explain that a little bit. At that point, we called ourselves a full service internet agency. But if you
in 2014.
In 2014, before we took off. And if you're really honest, we were not full service because we were doing only, and I say only, the concept, development, design of basically websites, portals, commerce shops, apps and services that sort of owned properties, the owned platforms of our clients. What we were not doing was, for instance, digital marketing or brand and advertising or true integrated omni-channel commerce solutions. So we were lacking out on many of the sort of developing digital disciplines, and we saw, because of the digital transformation, that our more serious clients were making larger demands for being able to deliver a more integrated approach. And we wanted to move into that market. So that was an external motivation to really shift gears, so to speak. So as a very lucky circumstance, we were approached by a private equity company in January 2015 who were looking for a platform agency to help perform a buy and build strategy. And at the same time, we were having this, internal and external motivation to take a step to the next level. We saw it as a golden opportunity. We took them on board. We learned from them the game for doing acquisitions and integrations. And on the other hand, we developed our own sort of story, proposition, service developments on which sort of services or what sort of markets, what sort of clients would make sense to combine. And that has evolved now into what we now call Dept. And I think we can now say we have a truly integrated digital agency that covers all the aspects of the digital customer journey, from brand and advertising to 360 commerce. It's all underpinned by data, machine learning for optimizations, and we cover the whole range. And that's truly our goal.
The motivation, I remember the sales of Sinna Schrader to Accenture Group. I think it was last year, 2 years ago. I'm not sure. And Matthias Schrader, which is also a very popular figure in the Hamburg e-commerce network, told that even if they had like 500 people back then, that wasn't by far big enough for the demands of the very, very big clients, which just hire for one project like 500 people, and they needed to decide, do they want to stay with like the mid-size project, which is like for like a smaller agency, like still like a multi-million contract, or do they really want to go with the Daimler, Mercedes-Benz brands, Bayersdorf brands, or Heineken brands, and do like the very, very big jobs? Can you describe a little bit like the development of the demand for digital services in the Dutch market? Is it similar here, or is it a very German problem?
So let's obviously we understand that elephants dance with elephants, right? If there's a client who wants to staff a 1,000-person team, that's not for us. Funny enough, some of the sort of big corporates that you mentioned in the German market might also be our clients that we work for. Then sometimes we don't do the entire digital strategy of the whole organization, but it's more either a department or just a part of it, but that's also workable for us. So that's, I think, for one, you're never going to be the biggest. I don't think it's an ambition of us to be the biggest. It's an ambition to be the best and the most innovative digital agency. We're not about adding volume, we're about adding value and margin. So that's basically our strategy. If you look at the Dutch market, I think what we learned when we moved to One Dept last April, and we dropped all the old brands, so TamTam, Expand Online, a friend of mine, Second Degree, they were all well-known Dutch brands in the Dutch agency market. We dropped them all in favor of One Dept, and all of a sudden, we got new demands from a new category of clients with bigger assignments, and we can now say we're truly working for the biggest Dutch organizations, but we have to be realistic. Those are not comparable to the size of maybe a Daimler or other big German organizations.
And how could you avoid, and I remember this because I had Matthias Schrader on the Kassenzone.de podcast, the German one 2 or 3 years ago, and he's more or less the same age as you and has been around in e-commerce, internet, like since the beginnings. And how was it possible for you to avoid like the taste of instead of doing digital services, but doing like an e-commerce business yourself? Because you have been around when those e-commerce businesses really started to emerge and really got big, and then it's like you have all the developers, you have the e-commerce skills, you're basically running maybe the e-commerce business for some of your clients, but you're not profiting on the other side, on the other hand, and it's like, and you're an entrepreneur as you've proven with your career path. So how was this possible, not being involved in product projects?
That's a good question. We know our limitations as entrepreneurs, and seriously, we've always, and I may refer to Willem sitting next to me. When we walked into Willem's office a couple of years ago, there was a line on the wall that struck with me forever, and I think the regular listeners of the past podcast might know the line, probably. It's hocus pocus, keep the focus. And I think this is something that is, and that's also why we were so willing to take on this adventure of going Dept together with Willem and the team from Expand Online, because this is so much also our culture. We know we've seen all these opportunities to build product or to build business or to build whatever. We know we want to build an agency, and we better do one thing right than two things half. So it might have been possible to do something, but I just know I'm an agency guy. I love doing what I do. I love working for clients. I love helping them develop their digital channels and their digital business. There could have been other paths in our lives, but Paul and me, we just stuck with what we knew. We run an agency.
So, and Willem, just to keep up, I think you explained it in like the first episode, but for the newer listeners that didn't get to the first episode yet, though you have been one of the first target then in the new private equity driven.
So actually, I think the ink of the deal between Waterland and TomTom was not yet dry, and we received a call from Paul and Bart saying, guys, we're heading to this new adventure. We're going to build a European and now potentially global digital powerhouse. And actually that story really appealed to us because we also felt that we are hitting a limitation, because at Expand Online in those early years, we were focusing on digital marketing, on really making sure that we attracted the right traffic for the platforms of our clients. Whereas with TamTam, they were an expert on building those platforms that actually helped for us increase conversions from the traffic that we derived from the channels that we targeted. So for us, it was really a logical synergy to team up with TamTam. And for us, also felt that whenever we were working on projects together with Paul and Bart, we saw that synergy was not only happening in the work we did, in the strategy and the services, but also culturally. And I think that's an aspect that has been very important and a key of the success of Dept, that we look at synergies also from a cultural perspective. And I remember that we teamed up, we went to Lisbon with a couple of clients and we did a hackathon, and you couldn't tell who was from what agency. And that's really the feeling that you have right now if you walk into Dept offices. Of course, there are people who are aligned across services that they develop, for example, developers, designers, and data scientists. But it doesn't really matter what your background, which agency background you have, you really feel Dept now. And that's also something we look for in the buy and build. So if we talk to agencies abroad, we really want to sense that they feel this eagerness to grow, this ambition, but also like diversity and openness to the differences that we have within them.
But that's an interesting point to discuss, because we've seen 1, 2, maybe 3 artificially created agency groups in the German market. I think one of the first private equity driven was the UDG. And from what we've learned, what we've seen, it was really, really hard for them, and still maybe is, and for other groups too, to create such a joint culture and vision, because it's usually the case the agency founders sold their shares, get some because capital is free in these times, got their money out of business, and then most smaller agencies are usually like founder driven. Though he's a project manager, he's like the salesperson, he's like the key accountant, so he's like everything up to like maybe even like 100 employees, and this did not happen so far in your case, which is a very interesting one, and it's from very unique from what I've seen so far, and I'm following, of course, the Factor A story a little bit. So, what is your take on this, or what is the trick?
You want me to answer that? Yeah. So, of course, we know all that stories, and we know doing successful integration and building one successful culture and one successful business is hard. It's not easy, and we spend literally countless hours of time on making sure all these little things about how people can find each other, connect to each other, work with each other, communicate. There's just a lot of work to be done there. I think part of the success factor has to do with, I think what Willem mentioned, the pre-selection of the agencies that we want to have to join our group anyway. And basically, one little secret is we typically like the agencies that are not for sale, because it's an indication that the founders, owners are not done yet, they're not exiting, they're not thinking about cashing in and doing something else. We like the agencies where everyone is still energetic, entrepreneurial, growing, healthy, and has a decent horizon for taking a next step and taking on this adventure. That's the people we're looking for. Typically, we're also looking for the agencies where, and it's also similar to the culture that we're building. It's not only about sort of the top guy and then a lot of nothing and then the rest, but where it's a much broader base, much more of a non-hierarchical culture, where there's other strong personalities, where people have had the room to grow and to develop themselves and to take on the lead in various positions in the agency. So there's a broad base. So in the case where a founder would leave, and obviously some founders will leave in the course of these years that we do, there will be new people standing up and taking the lead over that respective team. We cannot guarantee that this will be successful forever, but I think as for now, we're about 3.5 years underway. So far, it's been successful. We see the culture, the vibe, the atmosphere is really positive, is really strong. I think we all have the sense that we're building something exciting together, which none of us could have done alone and by ourselves. And I think that's the strong point. Everyone understands that we need each other and we build together.
Is the base culture different in the different markets? So you have acquired like now agencies in UK, in Germany, and I've seen something in Copenhagen, Denmark, then in Portugal also. I'm not sure about that, but
Switzerland, Ireland.
So do you see like different cultures in those countries throughout agencies?
Yeah, obviously a lot of the cliches are true. That's why they're cliches. So you see some of these sort of country nation difficulties, not difficulties, but the sort of characteristics. Maybe it's a Freudian slip of the tongue, difficulties. But the funny thing is, because this digital culture is so international, that the baseline of the passion of the people, it's quite similar wherever you go, because people speak this digital language about the digital transformation, about building digital services, digital solutions. So I think that's quite similar, but we always find, there's some differences. I mean, the UK is different than the Dutch culture in the way organizations are organized. UK is, I would say, sometimes a little bit more really results driven on an individual level. And I think we are more results driven on a collective level. And there it's subtle. And I think, our pre-selection makes sure that that difference is not that big. But those are the subtle things that we come across. And we respect that because we allow for that differences because the UK is the UK. I mean, if the people are used to working like us in a certain way, they can work in a certain way.
So, and how fast can you scale this kind of approach? And I think it was the most popular question in our picnic podcast. So, how fast can you grow?
How fast can we grow?
And how why are you not already like in Poland and in all the other countries? So, what is and you're probably like limited management bandwidth somehow, and integration takes time. And there's more and more agencies, and now it's not only integrating Factor A in Dept, it's also integrating them in all the other still active agencies in the countries, and just by doing the proper introductions, you would probably need a whole team doing this the whole time. So, what is like can you build something like this up to like 10,000 people in a proper time frame, or is it kind of limited?
I really don't see why it would be limited. I would not claim that we could go to 10,000 people in 1 year. That would not be possible. But let's put it this way. When we started 3.5 years ago, we set ourselves also some quantitative goals in terms of size and growth, and that sort of able to absorb acquisitions and integrate. We set that goals for a 5-year time frame, and we reached them within 3 years. So we surpassed our own goals in terms of how fast we're able to grow. We see another development. When we grow, we see more talent coming on board. I think that's really important for us, is that the founders, the directors, the managers of the teams that join Dept will take on initiatives and an autonomy and a responsibility of our own, so build the network further from there. So I think we're really trying to leverage this inflow of talent in terms of being able to accelerate our growth there. And just as an example, what we did in this spring, in the period from April to June, we successfully acquired and closed 4 agencies, 2 in the German market, 1 in the Danish and 1 Swiss agency. And we already executed on all the 100-day implementation or integration plans that we run with that. And what we see is we've built up this machine, so we learn how to do it, and we reevaluate after each integration how to shape the integration process for the next time. So actually we're accelerating in that sense that the 17th acquisition and integration is going to be much easier than the 3rd or the 4th, because a lot of the things have been discussed, have been decided on, all the stuff from what email systems to use to what ERP systems or logistics systems to use, how to go on with media spend, how to do the bookkeeping on that, all that sort of things. We are sort of having been put in place. It's not set in stone, but it's something that's workable. If a new agency comes on board and we need to adapt, we adapt. But we sort of, we developed the blueprints for the organizations while building it itself. So I think it will, I don't see a reason why we should slow down.
And
I really don't.
Adding to that as well, I think from M&A perspective, there's a lot of room to grow thanks to these blueprints that Bart described. From a build perspective, I see a lot of room for growth as well. Take the example of Factor A, well known to you as well, Alexander. With Factor A, they were obviously growing rapidly already. Started 2 years ago and already with more than 100 people after 2 years, so a great accomplishment. Integrating them in Dept is not, we don't want to slow down their growth. So we want actually not to integrate them with Dept, but facilitate their growth and link them to other teams within Dept in other markets. So we can do a rollout in other markets. We can link them to specialists that we can teach what Amazon marketing is about. So actually facilitating growth, I think, is more important than integrating all the agencies and then losing their vibe. So, and that's happening with services that we buy, for example, with Factor A, but also services that we build. So we started data and intelligence, well known to me, and also marketing automations. So these services are actually started somewhere and then being rolled out across the markets. And this couldn't have happened when we were still a local agency or an agency active in 2 markets. Thanks to these European hubs, we're now able to scale internally developed services quicker across markets and regions as well.
And those services, are they like demand driven from the customers? Because what we are seeing, or what we've learned in the German market, that of course you could have started in Magento agency in 2008 when Magento was like the new upcoming technology. But today the agencies that didn't manage to grow over like 50, 100 people into other areas to have like a very big problem because nobody's doing a big Magento project anymore. They're moving on to other technologies or in-housing stuff. So same actually with digital services. So SEO, SEA management was a big thing. It became much more complex over the years. The very big customers in-housed everything, and it became a competitive advantage. That's something we're going to discuss with Norman in a couple of hours here in our shows. So the demand for services changed. What we're seeing right now is that people are not searching for technology, but for like partners that really are able to attract enough talent or enough people to work with those projects, because like strategy is not a limit anymore. It's like people to execute strategy. So it's a very, very interesting market. So what have you seen in change of demand in the market over the years?
So if I would start, I think it's also on the digital marketing side, there's a lot of change that's probably worth discussing. But let's put it that way. We see the same trends. We see, and I think it's a good thing, where the maturity of the digital transformation is now without dispute. There's no single organization that we know that doesn't have a serious program on how they want to go about this, how they want to build their digital capabilities in-house, and how do they want to collaborate or cooperate with agencies, with freelancers, what sort of sourcing strategy, offshoring, nearshoring, how are they going to go about it? I think that's, from an agency perspective, that's one of the most important things for us to consider. What is the client demand in terms of how they want to source our services and combine it and integrate that in their digital capabilities? Funny enough, when we were first seeing these trends, maybe somewhere 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was sort of considered as a red flag, right? Okay, all the clients are going to be insourcing all the digital capabilities, so you'll be out of work. We've seen quite the opposite. Whenever clients are more serious about taking on these capabilities in-house, their total demand of having more capabilities in this sort of explodes. What we can bring to the table, there's always sort of gaps where they might have good technology but less creative, where they might have good creative but less data. And this sort of gaps we can fill. The other thing we can bring to the table as an agency is the strategy, the customer journey focus, the concepts that are winning, that are changing, and that we can translate from one industry to the other.
But is this like kind of a something you can last on long term? Because what happens with this kind of big transformation is that people, of course, do have like a peak demand, and they need more and more agency support, and they need to in-house more, and that's why we started Sparker, because there's more and more companies say, okay, we never wanted to, but now we have to compete on a technical level. So we have to become like a software company, and that a lot of podcast guests we are having here, like Julian, like 1 hour ago, told, of course they invented like sleep robots, but they need to become a software company. Same with Willem Costello from Delft University, invented those smart windows, but essentially they need to become like a software company selling data through those windows to a platform. So that's what we are profiting from, though the Amazon effect, Tesla effect, Facebook effect, whatever you want to call it. People need to in-house, have much more complex solutions, want to build up teams, are not able to find those teams fast enough, and hire agencies instead, because you're probably rather able to attract talent. But is this kind of a long-term development you can last on, or are you developing into kind of a co-founder company building setup over the long run, as even bigger companies like a Philips or Heineken are moving into digital companies? Before, when you started TomTom, digital was only kind of a channel, a marketing channel, a part of the business, but not the business itself. No. And now it's becoming the business itself, which changes your role a lot.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that we started Dept and we started building Dept was to make sure that we adapt to this changing demand. Because I think in the old position where TamTam was 10 years ago, we wouldn't be able to keep up with this sort of value demand that these sort of clients would have from us. But no, I don't see it as a peak demand. I see it as I do completely agree with you that, digital is the business. So, where's the word digital? What does it mean, right? I mean, I think we'll drop the word in a couple of years where it will be all about business. And that's also where we're moving. And I think, there's always going to be movements in the market where there's new, where there's the incumbents, where there's the challengers, and everyone will be building new services, new propositions, new markets, new teams. And I have no doubt in my mind that there will always be a demand to supplement the internal capabilities with the specific, sort of agency skills. And those agency skills might be different from, let's say, building a website, which it was maybe 15 years ago. And it might be more like, okay, implement machine learning into this process where I can have better predictions of my supply and demand, whatever that may be. So it will shift, but I think we'll always have a place where sort of the customer meets the brand and how that is experienced, and that's where we want to be as an agency.
Mm. How do you see the Dutch market compared to the German market with like agencies like Superreal or still focused markets of Factor A in terms of agency demand? Are there the bigger companies here, or your bigger clients are setting up offices in Amsterdam, Rotterdam to attract talent, or are they still able to attract talent, I don't know, in Groningen, for example, and they're going to start building up their digital business, whatever it is, over there?
Well, I think we see a big pull towards the creative hubs. So being in Amsterdam or Rotterdam is definitely an advantage. Funny enough, one of our largest corporate clients is a huge German chemical distribution company, which has headquartered their digital team in Amsterdam, specifically because of this reason to be close to the creative and the digital talent. I think the German market is huge. It might be somewhat I would say there is a lot of opportunity left to move many of the German businesses into a full-fledged digital customer-oriented companies, and so a lot of work to be done there. And that's where we want to be.
What I've learned with Willem in our first episode is that you don't experience the Amazon effect here yet, because Amazon is not even the top 5 online retail companies. In Germany, it's depending on what numbers you're using, over 50% of the online market already. Do you expect such an effect here in the market? Yeah,
of course. I mean, if it's not Amazon, it will be other digital or online retailers, not with the power and the effect of Amazon, but I think the platforms like bol.com and Coolblue are also having a dramatic effect on retail in the Netherlands. So it's not similar in terms of scale and impact of what you see with Amazon in Germany, but obviously this effect is here as well. If Amazon will start to take the Netherlands seriously, that will change as well. I don't know if our market is large enough and interesting enough for Amazon to go full blown into our market, because we're relatively small, I would say.
Yeah, Switzerland is having the same discussion right
Denmark,
now.
They're all having the same discussions.
They are all hoping that it will be saved from Amazon. So maybe one last question, but you have to leave for your lecture. You've seen now so many technical development in the last 20 years and trends in digital agency landscape. What was your biggest mistake in taking something too seriously, like saying, okay, everybody is going to use KI in the next month? So has there been something
many mistakes
speak about?
Many mistakes. We've been doing stuff with for instance, but it's a small thing. I mean, VR is not taking off, and our investments in that have been pretty limited. I don't think that's big. If you look at the big picture, if you zoom out a lot, from maybe end of the 90s, we were big into intranets, and then we moved on into also doing corporate portals with a lot of the sort of corporate portal platforms like SharePoint, for instance, for Microsoft, etc. And we really moved into that direction of being a specialist for information worker solutions. And that's where I think we had a big difficulty being a real digital agency and having that other capability as well. And I think we realized ourselves late that it would be better to split, and we split it up in 2011. And what we've seen after that is that our takeoff in the digital space was really, really strong. So we should have done that way earlier.
Okay, and the recent trends in terms of augmented reality and artificial intelligence, is that something that where you see real demand from customers?
Yeah, I think VR is early, AR is early, so no real demand there for now. I mean, it's nice for campaigns and activations and on point of sale sort of event spaces, so you can do lots of those sort of and create the content around it. But in terms of integrating into a real business process, I think it's relatively early. AI is serious business, and then to put it down very simple, machine learning to make better predictions based on data. It's as simple as that. You can put it in many processes. You can put it in marketing and AdWords, but you can put it into demand forecasting or whatever you can use it for. And we use it in a lot of spaces. So that is really taking off very quickly, very seriously. There's nothing ingenious about it. It's no magic. It's simple, based on data, make better predictions.
Cool. Thanks a lot for your time here in the podcast. All about digital. Our next guest in our episode number 9 will be the founder of Meatable. They don't do digital at all. They try to produce meat from cells of cows. So it's a very physical business. But thanks for your time being our guest in WimLex.